I'll call our board meeting to order and open the public hearing. Before we do that, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. We'll be passing around a sign-up sheet. We hope to get your names, addresses, and email address so that we can continue to correspond with you. We're going to start with introductions of the board, and then we'll introduce people from Tennessee Kids. Bob Masseri, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Steve O'Leary, Board of Selectmen. Brad Jones, State Representative, former Selectman.
Jackie Cowan, Town Council from Copeland and Page.
Joe Fode, Selectman.
Jeff Yule, Selectman.
Michael Frisco, Board of Selectmen member. Alan Ford, Kinder Morgan.
Mark Howard, Project Manager, Kinder Morgan.
Mike Lennon, Land Manager, Kinder Morgan.
Thank you. Before we get started tonight, I just wanted to run through a few things. I'm going to ask everyone if you would please just silence your phones. You don't have to shut them off. I know you probably some of you may have babysitters. I would just ask that you silence them, and so we don't have any interruptions during the presentation. Out the door to my left, the restrooms are right there if anybody needs them. In case of emergency, obviously you see the exit in the rear. You also can exit up in the front as well. How we're going to run things tonight is we're going to allow Kinder Morgan to give their presentation. Allow them to finish the presentation. Please note your questions as you're going through. How we're going to run it tonight is I'm going to recognize your questions. I'm going to ask you, if you're not a town resident, not to ask questions. I would like to give all the town residents an opportunity to ask questions first. I'm going to ask you to limit your questions to one, with an opportunity for one follow-up, and then I'm going to move on to the next person. There's quite a few people in the room. I like to make sure we get through it all. And then if we have time at the end for those non-residents that are here, we can consider it, but I'd like to try to keep this mainly to the question and answer from North Reading residents only. When you're giving your question, when you stand up there, or Mr. Fode will be coming around handing you the microphone, I'd ask you to give your full name and your street address before you ask your question. And then throughout the evening, we're going to follow the Robert's Rules of Order through me. I'm going to ask that we be polite and respectful to the information provided. You may hear something you may not like, but I'd ask you to please keep it in a respectful manner in your responses, and we will do the same as we respond. So to get started, I'm going to turn it over to you folks, and if there is anything you need from us to get started. All set? You need a microphone, or you're going to do it right here from that?
I'll do it from here.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Selectmen, for the invitation to be here this evening to talk about Kinder Morgan and a proposed project that we have for New England. With us tonight, joining me, introduced themselves already, but for information on their area of expertise, Mark Hamrick's our overall project manager for the project, so we'll ultimately be responsible for constructing it. And Mike Lennon is our land manager in charge of coordinations with landowner relations. So tonight, we hope to give you an overview of what we're thinking about doing on this project and answer questions that you may have at very, very early stages of a potential project. So to start, a little bit about Kinder Morgan and what we do. We're primarily a transportation and storage company for energy. So this map shows our footprint across over 45 states in the country. And the lines represent systems for transporting various types of energy, transporting and storing. The lines show transportation of different types of product. The small circles and dots show terminal facilities where product is stored. So we're not a drilling company. We don't extract the gas from the ground. We transport it from point A to point B at the request of our customers. We operate much like a toll road. We charge a federally regulated fee for transporting product on our lines. That's our business model. That's what we do. And we are the industry leader in the transportation of natural gas and the largest pipeline company in North America. So we have a lot of experience in this industry. And what this is really all about, our transportation of energy and what pipeline companies do, is transport energy from where it's plentiful to where it's needed. And this is a good map put out by the U.S. Energy Information Agency. And by the way, this whole presentation we'll provide to the Board of Selectmen. You can post it on your website or wherever you'd like to distribute it. And we're going to go through a lot of slides so you have a chance to print these out on your own and take a look at them. But this shows where the shale plays are. Shale plays mean basically where the energy is underground, where it's extracted from. Historically, the energy in New England has come from this area, the Eagle Ford Shale. To some extent, the Rocky Mountains, primarily from the Eagle Ford, Haynesville, Barnett Shale areas of Texas, Louisiana, part of the country. More recently, the last 20 years, this Marcellus Utica Shale area is the primary supply area for New England. So much closer to the region, transporting the gas basically from the northeast to the northeast. So that's on our system, as you can see, and we'll talk about more, is strategically placed in these various areas so we can transport product really anywhere in the country. But specific to New England, the Tennessee gas system, you see that here in the purple, and here a little closer. This blue line is our Tennessee gas system. This is a 13,000-mile system, one of the two primary sources of natural gas for New England currently. This has been transporting natural gas to New England for over 50 years. And the difference is now it's being transported from the Marcellus Shale rather than this part of the country, simply primarily because of proximity. It's close to home. So about 35 million households currently served by this system in New England and across the country. Customers in New England, again, many of these long-term relationships with various local distribution companies. So these companies here, including local companies here in North Reading, are getting gas currently from our existing system. So a long-standing relationship providing energy to local companies in New England. In Massachusetts, going back to the overall Tennessee gas system, remember it started down in the Gulf. Now we're just looking at the Massachusetts portion of it. You can see here our extensive footprint in the state. Again, been here over 50 years, transporting gas safely to homes and businesses, customers and homes. Our customers who then transport to homes and businesses across the state. About 600 miles of pipe currently. You can see our footprint too, the taxes that we pay and the employees that we have. And in Middlesex County, about $1.4 million a year to local taxing dollars. That's annual. So the Northeast Energy Direct Project, NED, is what we want to talk about tonight. I'll say at the outset that this is a proposed project. We don't yet have secured customers. We have not filed for any permits. We've been in the very, very early stages of exploring what we believe is a needed project for New England. And this is why. This is what others are saying in the industry and observers and some elected officials are saying about an energy crisis facing the Northeast. Unprecedented gas capacity constraints, the highest volatility in gas commodity prices. And these are headlines in regional newspapers. The United States Senator from the region wrote the Secretary of Energy. These are all public documents. They're concerned about service disruptions. This is in high peak times like this last winter. The polar vortex which affected New England and the Midwest and many parts of the country. Service disruption due to limited pipeline capacity. Everybody talked about the Tennessee gas system being one of two, along with the Algonquin system, two major providers of natural gas to the regions. They're full. The pipelines are full, and there's a limited amount of pipeline capacity in them for additional expansion, or basically providing gas to the current customer base. The governors of the region, in coordination with the ISOs, are saying we need to have more investment in pipeline infrastructure. So taking all this into account, we as an infrastructure company and the largest server of gas to the region look at expanding our system. We've been providing it here for many years. So we're talking about a potential expansion of our existing system. What's already here, expanding it with the construction of new pipelines. About 52% of the electricity produced in New England currently comes from natural gas. That number is going to go up. Coal use is going down. Nuclear use is going down. Crude oil use is going down. Natural gas is going up. So additional supply is going to be needed. You see this blue chart here. This explains, where I talked about supplies were before coming from the Gulf. Well, now this blue is the Marcellus Shale. So currently, about 60% of the entire supply to New England is from the Marcellus Shale. You've heard about frac gas, hydraulic fracturing. That is frac gas. That's what this is. That's what's currently serving the customers in New England. 60% frac gas. That's going to be up to 92% of the supply, regardless of whether this pipeline is built or not. Going back to the Marcellus Shale, you saw the large deposit, Pennsylvania and Ohio. That's where the gas supply New England is currently coming from, and is going to almost be entirely coming from within the next 10 years. And that is if nothing changes currently from the pipelines that are servicing the area. So looking at all these factors, what can we do as a company to address these issues? A couple more stats about what others are saying about the energy crisis. So we're talking about the Northeast Energy Direct Project. This is a large-scale map of what it is, basically beginning in Troy, Pennsylvania here, looping our existing system here, a new construction paralleling the Constitution Pipeline in New York, twinning our existing line in Wright, New York, to about the Richmond area in Massachusetts, and then a new construction from Richmond over to Drake. And Drake is the end point of the pipeline because that's an intersect with other pipelines that can distribute it both north and south and across Massachusetts. So that's the overall footprint of the pipeline. The schedule of the pipeline, we're right here at this stage, the initial introduction stage. As I said, we haven't filed for any permits and we haven't had any firm contracts with customers. So what does that mean? Well, when we build something or propose to build something, the first thing we need to know is this a project that's needed? We need to know it because this is a $4 billion capital investment on our part. But also is it something that the regulators are going to approve, because they're not going to approve a pipeline that doesn't have a purpose. You have to get a certificate of public convenience necessity from the federal government. Part of that is this pipeline needed. And how do you show that? You show that by firm contracts. So if you got a 30 or 36-inch line, maximum capacity of 2.2 billion cubic feet per day, you've got to have a certain amount of that reserved. We're thinking that's about 600 to 700 billion cubic feet per day to justify this pipeline. And until and if we don't secure it, until we do, or if we don't secure that, there won't be a project moving forward. We have to pass that hurdle first. We have to have those firm, long-term contracts to justify construction. Then, you need to determine a pipeline that you believe is permittable. There's an extensive permitting process for the state and federal, and local governments have a key role in throughout the process. So we're really right here at this early stage with the route selection process and trying to determine the final route. So the pipeline could potentially serve the equivalent of about 1.5 million households. That's we have the maximum build of the 36-inch pipeline going up to 2.2 billion. And best case, this is a schedule that's going to take a lot of activity from us and from regulators to meet. And what our customers are telling us, potential customers, is they want gas by the winter heating season of 2018. That's the earliest this pipeline could be finished. So as you can see, we've got a 4-year process ahead before this pipeline will potentially be in service. So there will be an extensive public consultation process. Typically, what the Federal Regulatory Commission will do is have a series of public hearings similar to this, except in that case they'll take formal testimony from interested citizens and stakeholders. Those will be run by the federal government. We'll also host open houses where we'll have teams of people in here to talk about environmental and land issues and energy issues and natural gas and safety and all the other issues that people can talk to. And those will be held all across Massachusetts and in New York and New Hampshire and those states. So those will be coming here in this open house scoping meeting stage late this year, early next year. So the first activity you see from a formal sense, if we do move forward with the project, is the filing with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the FERC, in October of this year. So again, very early, very exploratory, having conversations with landowners, doing presentations like this to talk about a potential project. In addition to the main line is the big 30 to 36 inch line that would be the main transportation piece of the line. We're also looking at laterals, which is actually what is here in the community here. It's a smaller pipe, I think it's 20 inch that we're looking at here in the Linfield lateral, that are servicing a customer or helping to connect pieces of pipe together. So these are at customer interest that we're doing these potential laterals. Some of these may end up being in the application, some of them may not. And really, the route that we end up with is the right route right now. The proposed route is very much in flux. We're making adjustments to it all the time. The route that we file with FERC will be our proposed route. So we've got a few maps in here, a little bit closer look at North Reading, but that's still in flux as we're developing and adjusting the route, working with landowners. As I mentioned, from the regulatory side, this is a heavily regulated industry, and this project will have high-level oversight. From the federal agencies, the FERC will be the agency that determines at the end of the day whether this project is in the public interest. They will have extensive environmental review. They'll issue a draft environmental impact statement and then a final environmental impact statement. And ultimately, this project will go before the Board of Commissioners of the FERC. It's a 5-member board appointed by the President of the United States, 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans. It switches with whichever party the president. And they will make a vote at a public meeting in Washington on whether this project is moving forward. That will be far at the end of the process after all of the local input is taken. Corps of Engineers and other environmental agencies will have a large role as well as the state of Massachusetts. Through the Massachusetts State Legislature for Article 97 land to the public lands, if we access those. The Office of Energy and Environment has a very large role through the MEPA process. They'll also be holding hearings and activities on their end, as well as working with local town conservation commissions. So while a federally regulated project, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission does pull in all of these agencies as part of the review process. Just a list of the towns that currently are impacted in some way by the potential route impact. It means we may be passing through town jurisdiction, we may be passing through town fee-owned property, and this list is current, but it could change as we make adjustments to the proposed route. A little closer look in Middlesex County, you can see our pipeline system, the existing system, and the potential new route here. And then as we go into North Reading, see the Litchfield lateral right here. So this is really at this point a corridor we're looking at that we would complete our survey in. There will be some adjustments made. You can see here, obviously there's adjustments here for a variety of reasons. I'm not sure what they are off the top of my head, but we look at environmental issues, cultural issues, landowner issues, accessibility issues. All that is taken into account as we refine this route towards a route that we ultimately file with the Federal Regulatory Commission. And briefly on the routing, because I know that's folks have questions about that. We'll identify a route that we believe is the best route, best being our preferred route, taking into account the permittability of it, the constructability of it. But it's not our choice what the route ultimately is. We propose a route, the FERC will approve a route. They could adjust it, they could change it. They'll require us to file alternatives. So if we think this is a route, we've got to file an alternative. Probably 2 or 3 alternatives we'll need to file, and others will have input in the process. Others may have suggestions on route adjustments that they think would be better for a variety of reasons. So the routing process is certainly not complete when we identify a route. It will be still a lengthy process of discussion about that. So pipeline construction does, it's significant financial investment, and those benefits of the project do impact local communities. We expect about 3,000 construction jobs. These will be union labor jobs. We've signed a memorandum of agreement with the laborers just last week that will be a union job. all union jobs in the project. So a lot of construction, about $25 million a year in tax revenue will come into Massachusetts. We pay about $5 million now with our existing pipeline system. Because it's a newer system, we think that'll be about $25 million. But the real benefit, I think, is the long-term additional supply of energy to the region that will help address those major constraint issues that have been identified by the policymakers. Kinder Morgan is committed to be open and transparent during this process. We've had a lot of meetings. Our state representative is here. We've met with a lot of folks. It certainly doesn't mean any of these folks are supporting the project, but it means that we're trying to get out and talk and be transparent, have meetings and educate folks and answer questions. We've been to 12 or so town hall meetings. We were in Richmond last night. We'll be to every town that wants us to come and give a presentation, and I'm sure many more. And we bring the folks that we hope can be responsive to your questions. So at this early stage of the process, we want to have that dialogue, and we want to communicate with folks and talk about what we're planning on doing. And as is our reputation with our current assets, we're very involved in the communities, partnering with emergency responders and schools and building parks and playgrounds. We're going to do that here too with this project if we move forward on it. We've got a very good reputation, I think, with doing business here for 50 years in the communities that we've worked in, and we're going to continue that good community partnership in the future. And we also have a Kinder Morgan Foundation that donates to schools and arts organizations, and we certainly plan on continuing to do that in the region as well. So that's our project in a nutshell. I know we covered a lot of information and look forward to answering your questions. This is early in the process, and I can't emphasize that enough because we haven't decided yet whether we will pursue the project from a commercial basis. We think we will, but we haven't made that decision yet. And we certainly haven't filed for any permits yet, which begin the official part of a process that begins that 4-year process for a potential project to be in service. We've done a lot of town halls. You know this project has been covered a lot in the newspapers, and we understand there's a big debate. Is a project like this needed? Is it what New England needs for the long term? Is it addressing the long-term energy supplies of the region? All fair questions for forums like this and for the detailed analysis is going to go on by the permitting agencies that will ultimately determine whether or not this project can go forward. What we are committed to do is being transparent in our process, in working closely with all impacted folks, whether it's the Board of Selectmen or the individual landowners, environmental groups, whatever it might be, to talk about this. And at the end of the day, if the project is warranted, if it's commercially viable, if it's accepted by the permitting agencies, we think it's a project that will serve the generational natural gas needs for New England. And we look forward to discussing it tonight and in the future. So happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Before I start opening up to the crowd for questions, I'd like to just ask anybody on the Board of Selectmen who'd like to ask a question first. Voting?
Representative Jones, lead up.
Well, first of all, thanks for coming tonight. I'll be candid, I wish it was earlier than in June. And I think when we met earlier this year, I had expressed to you that getting out into the community earlier for a forum like this would be better. And I think that candidly, as you can imagine, there's a level of apprehension. And I think that apprehension is only compounded by the initial impression that's created by waiting until June to get out here. And I know it's difficult to get out early, I know it's early in the process, and sometimes you can get questions that you're not far enough along in the process to answer with details, and I know that can create frustration. But I think when you create that level when you compound that level of frustration, you create a level of mistrust. And hopefully, some of that can be allayed tonight, realizing that anytime there's a pipeline project, it creates great concerns. Having been through this in the town of Middleton, there are a number of questions, there are a number of aspects to it, and I do appreciate having gone through it. This is still very, very early in the process. But candidly, hearing from constituents who get, I think, a Saturday morning knock on the door and asked to go in their backyard and check their property with no idea what this is about isn't the best way to go about it. So I know that's not really a question, but hopefully it's an expression on behalf of the community of a concern that I certainly have heard, and I'm confident that members of the Board of Selectmen have heard as well. And hopefully we can take a better step in a better direction tonight. And I'll turn it over to anybody else. Joe.
Thank you. I think Representative Jones probably said everything we had to say, but I just want to elaborate a little bit more. You know, I think the frustration for most of the residents in town, from us also, is not only the Saturday morning knock, but some of the letters, some of there we go. Some of the letters that were going out were, you know, I mean, they were interpreted as almost, you know, like you were being forceful and kind of threatening to the residents. And, you know, for us not to, for the selectmen and for the town administrator not to have any communication from your organization, from your company, and these people get it, and we have no answers for them, doesn't make for a great start to the project. You know, I'm involved in a community where we have utilities, and we get communications months and months in advance before anything started, before any communication to the residents started. And I just think we really got off to a bad foot. And it's, and we appreciate you being here tonight. The problem is, as Representative Jones said, it should have probably happened months ago, regardless of how early into the project it was, just informational purpose. Tell people what you're here for, why you're going, or why you want to go into the yards, why you're going onto town property, and then we'll come back to you more when we have more information. But to do it the way you did it really just kind of, again, as Representative Jones said, was kind of backhanded, you know, and don't take this the wrong way, but it was a little sneaky. And I think that's the bad taste that we had to come up now. You kind of, to get to where you want to be, you got to kind of rebuild that you know, that relationship with not only the residents, but with the board and the new town administrator. So unfortunately, got off to a bad start, and we're hoping we can start from scratch and at least get some dialogue going between us and the residents, so we can find out what's going on. We can express our concerns and move forward, whether or not the project moves forward. Thank you.
Good evening. Once again, I just want to echo, and again, it's an echo here, but echo Representative's comments and Joe's comments in relation to the frustration on our part that you've caused, the way that you've handled the situation. And we're getting calls from residents in the town, our constituents, you know, asking us questions on something that we're unaware of. We have not been informed, fully informed, or even partially informed to the degree where we can feel as though we can give the people some sort of answers as to where it is, where the project is at the current stage. What role can we play in this? I know we're going to be heard, you know, get heard out to the federal level and the state level and all these other areas, but you know, the average citizen here don't have the resources to go down, fly down to Washington and testify. You know, so we need to know as a board as to whether or not we have to start committing some resources to protect the community's interest. One of the things that you stated is that these laterals are at customers' interests. So who are your customers and who has asked you to extend this lateral? And it looks like it dead ends in Linfield, is that correct? So who are your customers that have asked for the extension of these laterals through these communities, first of all? And then the timing of the filing for permits, you said that you haven't filed for any permits yet. What is your anticipated timeline, and at what point do we weigh in? So the lateral question first with your customers.
Okay, so let me go back to the slide with the current customers. Okay. So right now, to directly answer your question, no customers. We don't have any customers signed up for this project. But the laterals I talked about, and for the lateral here, I'll have our project manager talk about that a little bit. It's connecting the northern line and the southern line a bit. But for a lot of the other laterals, they're smaller pipes. Some are 8, 12, 14 inches. Those are based, for example, the Hollis, New Hampshire lateral. That's based on the local distribution company there saying, can you get gas up to this particular point? We say, yes, we can. How much might you need? This is how we would propose to build that. Now, is that customer in Hollis, New Hampshire signed up? No. We stand here today, we have no contracts for this project. What they've told us is, and several of these, I can't say which ones because they're still negotiating, but several of these companies have said, can you build here, or can you build here, or we're potentially looking at 100 million cubic feet per day on the main line, build a lateral. That's why this is all in development and flux, because none of that is secure. And so that's the customer piece. And Mark will talk about the specific to the lateral, but your other part was about the permitting process. And when does that process begin? It really will begin when we file for the FERC certificate. It's called a pre-filing process. And we'll identify through what are called resource reports in that filing our route and the general specifications of the project and our general plans. It ultimately ends up being 10 resource reports. But in the short term, we'll identify those general topics, the scope of the project, customers will be identified, and then they'll begin the public hearings and the open houses and that part of the process. Concurrent with that will be the MEPA process.
What's the timeline?
The timeline, let me go back to that too, it's listed here on the map. Here we go. Here's our project timeline. So the pre-filing process will begin in October, scoping meetings and open houses, November, December, January, February. Public comment process all through that. FERC.gov will have the application and all the comments on their website that people can go and look at. Towards a FERC filing, that's a formal document that's developed through this pre-filing process in September of 15. And then a year and a half of additional review. That's when you'll have your draft environmental impact statement that comes out for public comment, turns into a final, all moving towards what we believe would be a FERC approval process in November of 2016, construction beginning in January 2017. This is what we believe the schedule will be. FERC has given no indication that they approve of this schedule. This is what we believe and our understanding of how they operate generally with their approval process, but that's the rough schedule that we believe it to be.
And then what is your relationship? Is it National Grid, the high tension lines, you appear to be following them to a certain degree.
Right.
What's the relationship between that utility and yourselves? I mean, you're not a public utility.
We're not a public utility.
You're private.
Yeah.
Have you developed a relationship with them yet in relation to getting access?
So, Alan talked about routing before of a pipeline, and we try to co-locate with other utilities as often as possible. So is there a direct relationship between the high tension line that we're trying to follow here and the pipeline? Not directly, other than most times it's appropriate to try to co-locate with other utilities. So we'll work with National Grid to determine the width of their existing easements, the voltage of those lines, which will determine how close we can construct to it. So I know we visit with a lot of landowners. We are following, they're aware of the National Grid right away behind them. Common question is how close are you going to be, where exactly going to be, and that's part of this process now to work not only with the landowner, but also with the easement holder, which would be National Grid, to determine the width of their easement holders, those things.
At what stage of the game are you with National Grid?
Very early on, just like the other landowners, reaching out to them, asking for survey permission. The fee landowner ultimately would grant the survey permission, but we want to share information with them about what our proposals are and receive from them their information as well.
So they have not granted you permission yet to survey? Or have they?
For their fee properties, no. It would be the actual landowner, the fee landowner, residents of North Reading that would grant permission for us to go on there.
And then in some of the correspondence to the residents, it appeared to be somewhat threatening, whereby you indicated some fashion or another that you would have the right, you would be granted the right, even if the people don't allow it, to access their property and survey. Could you explain that to the people a little bit, how that works?
Yeah, and I apologize if it comes across as threatening. It was designed more to be educational about the process. The process sorry to perceive that way. But in the process of introducing the project to people will often ask, well, what happens if I say no? What happens if I don't allow it? And in Massachusetts, the Department of Public Utilities does have a process for companies such as ours to go through. So we try to articulate that in the letter to those landowners that we were working with as to what that process was.
But you were not a public utility, correct? So you're a private enterprise looking to deliver a product for the common good. So how does, again, the impression is that, maybe a misimpression, and it wasn't directly said necessarily, is that you may fall into the category of a utility, or a public utility, but it's private. So really, do these residents have a say?
Well, the residents always have a say, and that's why they were the initial contact, whether it be via letter or a Saturday morning knock on the door, to introduce the project to them, to try to get as much feedback. Our teams have been on the ground, John Gavin here.
They were presenting it on the ground, right?
Right, trying to gather feedback from the residents about the specific, not only ask for permission, but also gather information about their parcel specifically and their feelings towards the project and what concerns they may have.
All right, so correct me if I'm wrong, so far you don't have any customers, you haven't had any other utility company with like a natural gas company, a national grid, ask you to do this lateral, correct? And so you have no customers, no one's asked you to do it, and you're not a public utility, and National Grid has not authorized you to do the surveying of their properties as of yet. Correct?
Survey rank.
National Grid, again, we are working to share information with them, but for their feedback.
Clarify it for us, as far as National Grid. I mean, they own some property, they have rights over other people's property.
Yep.
For the properties that they own, have they authorized you to?
No, at this time.
You want to talk about the lateral mark too, and what the purpose of the lateral is?
Before we get into that, an additional question on that. So the Federal Energy Regulation Commission, they have not given you a certificate.
Oh, no, that wouldn't be until the fall of 16.
Correct. So is that how the process is supposed to start though? You start there, you get the certificate, and then you start working with the utility, DPU?
No. Okay, so good question. Let me just clarify the DPU process a little bit too. So if we were to seek to petition the DPU for survey access, and it's up to them to determine whether we qualify as a utility for purposes of granting a survey permission. And we haven't decided to do that. If we tried to do that, there would be a hearing process. And residents would be allowed to make their case that we shouldn't be allowed to do that. But we haven't filed those petitions. We mentioned in the one letter that we sent out that that's a possibility. We have not decided to do that. And what we're trying to do on this survey process, and we're at about 40% overall, and the project over 40 is about 40% here. 40% voluntary survey access so far.
In North Reading or overall?
In North Reading and overall about 46. So it's about the same here as in other places. What we're trying to do with that process is seek voluntary, and to your question, this isn't an easement we're seeking. That process would only begin after the FERC certificate was granted to us, where we would finalize those. But this process is to seek survey as we're trying to refine our routes and develop a survey corridor where we can take a look out there and see what's out there. Because what we've tried to do in identification of this route is to identify what we believe from information that's available publicly, from aerial surveys, from driving in the area, from what we know, is this a constructible route? And then, once we start the survey, we may find when we get our environmental surveys down on the property that's not, and we need to move it. Or we may find out in consultation with the landowner that we can move it from this part of the property to this part of the property. So all that is happening, and that's why it's helpful to us. It's not required that we have survey permission, but it's helpful to us in helping identify the route that will ultimately file as a footprint. So that's the process in the DPUs. And landowners have a big say about this. Again, there'll be a hearing process if we would decide to.
How deep is the pipe, and what do you do for test borings?
The pipe would be buried a minimum of 3 feet deep. And roads, rivers, places like that would be deeper. What was the second question?
Test borings?
For the route, okay. As far as geotechnical borings, the project gets far enough along and we've got our routing, then along the route at certain areas for river crossings where we're drilling or near road crossings. At select points, we'll do test borings where we feel we need to field verify the depth. Usually we don't do them for the typical construction where the trench might only be 6 feet deep. But if you're going to do a river crossing and drill or something like that, you'll do test borings, and it's basically getting permission from the landowner, bringing in a rig and doing test borings just to check the soil sample. A lot of rock up here, so a lot of rock.
Excuse me, just for 1 second, please. I just want to let you know that Bruce Torrance, Senator Bruce Torrance just entered the room. But I did want to ask you to make a statement more than anything else. I think one of the biggest concerns that we have before us here is, I know there's a process, there's all permitting, there's the federal level, there's the state level, and everything. But I think the bottom line, while everyone is here, how this is going to disrupt their property. And I think that's the bottom line that you're going to have to answer in the long term in order for this to be a smooth process. Because if we're going to be going into other people's property, having a pipe that's only 3 feet deep, and the concerns that they're going to have, those are going to have to be answered as we go forward. So please keep that in mind, because their properties are very important to them, and I guess there's a question, will this devalue their properties somewhere along the line? So this is huge, so just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Are there any further board members or other public officials who'd like to make a statement from this hearing? Cody, you'd like to have a follow-up?
Actually, I just had a request that they put the map that shows the town roads ready, and if they can blow it up, then you get a good look at it to see where the proposed trail's gonna go. Is there any way of making that any bigger?
This one here?
No, the one that shows. Yeah. Is there any way of making that bigger?
That's just the outline of the town.
No, the lines here. The lines are the border.
Right.
Oh, you're talking about the program. The dotted line is the border of the town.
And the purple line is
The proposed route that we're looking at now.
Move a car there.
It's all taped in.
Sorry, folks.
Paul, I apologize for the size. We had this set up for our projector, which was a wire view. Unfortunately, it didn't sync up with their laptop, so we had to use theirs, and that's about as large as we're going to be able to get. But as you said, this will be posted for you to look at it even further, and we'll put it up here. Mr. Messeri, please.
Just to elaborate on what has already been said, what I find inconceivable is the approach that you started this thing with, knocking on doors without notice, threatening letters. I find it incomprehensible that you would do this in the interest of you trying to get public support for the project. This is where it should have started, and started with the town authority first, filling us in so we could answer the questions that came flooding in after the door knocking started, and then the letters. And I think you owe the community an apology for that.
I do apologize for that. It's not a perfect process, and what we tried to do was to send out letters to elected officials in advance of our land agents going out and asking for survey. And could we have done a better job of that? Yes, we could have. Should we have been here sooner? Yes, we should have. But what I can say is that we are committed to working with you, with landowners, with elected officials, with all the stakeholders that are part of this process. And even though the introduction was not smooth, I'll admit that, we're still at the beginning stages. And I'm hopeful, based upon our overall reputation as a company in Massachusetts and the fact that we've had pipelines in the area for 50 years that have been run safely and professionally. While this introduction wasn't the best, I'm hopeful that we'll have a chance to show what we're doing and that our people that are on the ground are genuine and hardworking and honest and are going to spend the time necessary to build those relationships with the community.
Michael, just one other follow-up in relation to Jeff's comments as far as the disruption to people's properties and the property value, and the impact on property values. You obviously have 50 years worth of history here, laid thousands of miles of pipeline. What has been the experience of the effect on people's property, first of all, disruption-wise in relation to, what you've taken down, torn up, and replaced for the sake of digging down 3 or 4 feet or 6 feet, all of a sudden you're taking out a whole grove of trees. There's a disruption to the property. What has been the impact on property values? And then, more importantly, safety of the pipeline. Has there been any breaches, and what has been the effects of those?
On the property piece, the impacts we have on the property are primarily during construction. Yes, long-rooted trees, permanent structures can't be placed upon the 50-foot permanent easement of the line, but it can be used for other uses. And what we found is there a clear indication of what happens to property values? No, because on our line currently in southern Massachusetts, there are residential areas and subdivisions. And the reason we can't co-locate pipe in those areas is because they originally were constructed in rural areas that have turned into subdivisions. And you can see very clearly that our right-of-way, the houses have built up right next to our 50-foot right-of-way. So those obviously are still valuable areas to construct. It depends on the area, it depends on the current value, what other uses the property exists. So we haven't seen any clear indication of up or down on property value over the long term. And the question about safety, we operate 80,000 miles of pipe across the country, and there are occasional incidents, there are occasional leaks in the pipe. In the New England area, we haven't had any significant issues in that regard in the last 50 years. But that's not to say there won't be. I mean, transportation of energy is a complicated process. It's the safest way to transport it because pipelines are buried underground. So what do we do to prevent that? Why do we have a good safety record? And you can go online at kindermorgan.com. We're the only energy company that posts our safety record online for people to look at. So you can go on there and take a look at it yourself, and that we are an industry leader in safety. But you spend money on integrity management of your lines. You take care of them. These pipelines 50, 60 years old, they could last easily another 50 or 60 years because they're properly maintained. You have the right kind of pipe. You have it coated properly. You have cathodic protection which prevents corrosion. You run tools through the line to make sure there are no imperfections that you can't see once the pipeline is there. You monitor it 24 hours, 7 days a week. You put boots on the ground with our personnel looking out there regularly, aerially patrol the line. So you got a lot of techniques that you use to keep these pipelines safe, but it is a major issue. You know, the number one cause of accidents in pipelines is third-party contact with the line. So you need to call before you dig, you need to educate folks, you need to work with boards and emergency responders on how to deal with their incident if there is one. And we train emergency responders in that regard. So it's on the company, it's on the developer to make sure those things are done. And I ask you to look at our record and dealing with communities like yours and other parts of Massachusetts that we pass through. Not just what we say we're going to do, what we actually have done for the last 50 years.
Okay. I have a couple things I'd like to say, but I'm going to hold off until the end. I wanted to start to give the residents an opportunity to speak. We're going to start at the my left-hand side, and we're going to work our way to the right. So anybody on that side, raise your hand. Mr. Fody will come over with the microphone.
If they would be more interactive than left and right.
Yeah. That's perfectly fine. Mr. Fody's older now. I just don't want him to get too observant. Right? Anyway, I'll open up to anybody. Jonathan? Should have had you wear your sneakers, Joe, sorry.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Copeland. I live at 3 Scotland Heights in North Reading. So I'm just going to ask one question, but my question is like this. I live right next to the power lines. They're literally on my property. There's an easement from the gas company. And those power lines are built on hard rock. And the only, I know that I see it, the only way we're going to get through that rock is either by using a jackhammer or explosives. You're going to have to dynamite your way through. And what I'm concerned about is that all the houses that are literally adjacent to this, if you're banging away with dynamite, with a jackhammer, what's to stop cracks from appearing in my basement, in my walls? I may not notice these cracks for years. Will you pay? What if it costs $100,000? What if I can't sell my home because word gets out and they do an inspection and all of a sudden my house is worthless except for the land that it's on, and now someone's got to be paid to rip down the whole structure and put it up? Will you pay? Will you pay for the debris? You're doing a construction site in my backyard. It's going to be in my backyard. There'll be debris. Will you pay to clean up? Not only that, there'll be particulate matter. I'll be having to clean my house. Will you pay to be power wash it? Will you pay for the damage to my immaculately kept backyard? We have a landscaper. We spend a lot of money each month to keep this backyard in perfect condition. Will you pay to ameliorate all the damage? Are we going to have to sue you? I'm just really concerned that you just come in, leave a trail of damage in your wake, say you can't prove that this crack is a result of us, and you're gone with your billions of dollars. You're making this, it's costing you billions, then obviously you're making billions. And so I would just like to be told, look, you want to go through my property, you've got to be responsible for everything. One other thing while we're talking about money, how unlivable is my house going to be? Well, I moved to North Reading for the peace and quiet. So now I'm going to have a not very livable house. I don't know, 7 o'clock in the morning, bang, 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 bang. What if I actually want to sleep in one day? Will you pay for the hotel? What if, like my house, I don't want to live next to construction's over 6 months. Will you pay for all of that? I'm just very concerned that you won't. If you want to buy me out at fair market value, pay for all the trouble that you're going to cause me as a result of all of this, compensate me for everything. We're talking about something else, but I highly suspect that you're not. That's one of my list of many concerns. Of course, I'm only allowed to answer one question, but I'm just concerned it's going to leave many houses valueless, and we're going to have to pick up the pieces, and of course we're not going to afford to, we won't have the finances to do that.
Saying yes, the company will be responsible for any damages and for cleanup, and will compensate you for those disruptions.
Do we get that right?
At the time when we negotiate an easement, absolutely. We're not there right now, but we're just getting out the survey. But when we get to the point where this project moves forward, as Alan showed you in the timeline, we come to your property and say, okay, this is going to get real. We're going to purchase an easement and some temporary workspace and compensate for damages. There will be documentation which does state that the company will be responsible for construction damages. Case-by-case damages on each property, depending on the use, the close, the type of construction that will be needed in that area. And it's not going to be a take my word for it. It will be in the documents, and there will be studies and photographs, videos taken prior to construction, during construction, and post-construction, which you'll receive copies of, we'll have copies of. That would include a situation like you talked about the foundation, where they could go in there with a high-def camera. If there were to be blasting in a close proximity to any structure, they would actually set up, Mark, if you want to talk about this, about seismographs to study the vibrations as they're doing any type of blasting, so that there's data, so this can be measured. So I know you had a lot of questions, but the answer is yes.
I'm very concerned about the blasting, because even if you say, okay, your home will be okay, while the blasting is going on, I won't work at home. I effectively can't. If there's some reason, let's say my wife is on a business trip, which she does, and she comes home very late, she needs to sleep in,
all of a sudden our homes are livable. So I guess I want some sense that if you're going to be blasting, I want to be put up somewhere in a reasonably nice hotel, equivalent to where I'm going to be staying. I don't want to be out of pocket.
We've done that in the past. In unique circumstances, we say somebody works the third shift and they're home during the day sleeping, and that's when our construction activity. In the past, I have worked with landowners to put them up in a hotel. We can talk about what star hotel that would be, but we did it, yes.
I just want to address the blasting and the hammering, and you're exactly right. Those are the two methods. There's a rock saw, but typically the blasting is the less intrusive. And just to put it in perspective, we've built pipelines all over, and recently we've just done projects in New Jersey, and the rock's very hard there, so we have to blast. And we've built pipelines, we've built new pipelines 10 feet off of existing pipelines, high pressure gas pipelines, and the way it's blasted, the way it's done, and the holes are drilled, and it's not like, you know, people think of blasting like when you're seeing a highway project and the whole mountain comes off. That's not what happens. It's unique holes just along the trench line. To get that 3 feet of cover, you need maybe a 5 foot wide ditch and about 6 feet deep to put the 20 inch pipe in, and you drill the holes, space them correctly, put the blasting material in, and then the shots are all timed so that it's like, and it's really like a pop of a, you know, and cover. It's just pop, 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 you know, it's real soft and quiet. You're probably going to have more noise from the excavators. You know, I don't want to say you've got other disruptions, but the blasting is probably the least of the noise and disruption. Is the construction equipment when you've got that running. But when you do that, we've got systems, and it's the same when we've been near homes and blasted them, and the seismographs are put there, all controlled blasting, and we monitor it, and all the technology, it has to be timed so that it doesn't vibrate out and damage our pipelines. And I would say that all the projects we've done in the last 6 years, we've not had anything there. So there is systems, technology-wise, during the construction where the blasting is all controlled, and the construction process is very compact, and you'll get a lot of chances through open houses, but keeping the right of way, keeping the dust, you know, if there is dust issues, those are corrected, things like that, like Mike said. But I just want to give a little.
Name and address, please. My name is Ron Berg. I live at 321 Park Street in North Reading. My question is, there's a lot of serious environmental concerns about that route in North Reading, in addition to the landowner concerns. I'm wondering what alternatives you have in mind. With all the experience you have, you must have a plan B and a plan C. So I'm wondering what, if this turns out to be too environmentally bad for different reasons, where else would you put the pipeline?
Well, we need to further refine this route first. With the available data that we have, taking into account the environmental issues that you're referencing, and what we know about, and what we further know about through our granted survey permission that we're actually going to do detailed environmental and cultural surveys on. That may lead to route adjustments. So once the route we file with the FERC, if it's this route or something similar or something different, that route will then need alternatives. So we'll need to list this, whatever route this is, and we believe it will be similar to this, but it could change once we get out in the field and start doing our survey. But typically, there'll be 2 or 3 other alternatives that we'll need to find. One of the alternatives that we may have to look at is not anywhere near here. It could be in other parts of the state. So it depends on what our survey comes up with, but even if we believe this is the route, FERC will require us to identify some distinct alternatives to this, and that'll all be open for public comment.
Hi, I'm Bill Monahan. I live at 1 Damon Street. I want to say right from the beginning what they've echoed, that you've created a situation of mistrust from all your door knocking, from your threatening letters and everything. I think you've gone about this thing the entire wrong way. Having said that, your representative Keenan Bryn told several of my neighbors that this was the only route. Is that not true?
Yeah, I do. conversation, but I am Keenan's supervisor, and I think what was probably trying to be articulated is because of the fact that this is a co-location in your neighborhood there with the National Bridge that we talked about before, it is a preferred, and like Alan said, when you're selecting a route, you don't just blindly draw a line on the map. I know some people might feel that way sometimes, but where you have an existing utility corridor, that's what drove us to that location within North Reading. So I assume that's part of the dialogue.
That's true what he said. This is the only route. There is no alternative?
This is the preferred route. Everything is being evaluated right now.
The only route, he said, right? The only route. Okay. Number two, I read my easement that I signed when I bought my house. It says specifically that it's only for wires and telephone wires, nothing else.
Yes, good point there. The easement we would be acquiring would be a wholly new easement, okay? We would be purchasing, when we get to that stage, like I said, it might be years down the road, but if the project were approved, we would come back to you with the design for a permanent easement and would work out the compensation to purchase a new easement. Now, it may overlap. We don't have all the information on National Grid's easement width, but there may be overlap within there. But yes, you're absolutely right. The easement that they have now is between you and them. We would have to get our own easement.
Okay, so you'd need your own easement from me?
Correct, sir. Yes.
Yeah, I'm never going to give it to you, so where are we going to go now? I'm never going to have you on my property. Where are we going to go now? What step are we going to go to? We're going to go to another threatening letter, or we're going to take me to court? What?
Well, this is good feedback. We are trying to get feedback from landowners as to what their thoughts are.
I'm sure I'm not the only one in this room that's never going to let you on their property. So what's our next step? What are we going to do?
With regards to the survey, we talked a little bit earlier about potentially moving forward with the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities.
So that's the threatening letter that you sent?
The educational letter about what
You think that's educational? Okay. What PSI is the pipeline?
It's going to be 1,460 tons.
1,460 pounds, and that would be, on this proposed route, that would be like less than 200 feet where we lay our heads at night, go to bed, and you think that's safe?
It'll be designed to all the safety standards.
Who's safety standards?
Yeah.
The federal safety standards and Kinder Morgan standards.
Is that customary to have a 1,400-pound pipeline that close to people's houses?
It is. I mean, it's done.
It's done, okay. Why wouldn't you pick a route, say, down the side of the highway where there's no homes?
Yeah, that's one of the alternatives we look at. There's inherent issues with building on the highway, getting easements with the highway, the interference of third-party damages, so there's risk there. Folks, I'm gonna ask you please to refrain from interrupting. I know you may not like their answer, but please give them the respect to let them answer, and I'm gonna give you the opportunity to ask your questions, okay?
You mentioned about aerial
One
inspection.
more question, and I'm gonna move on to someone else, and we'll come back to you when somebody else has an opportunity, okay?
Yep, sure. You mentioned about aerial inspections, and I read somewhere on the internet that that's done daily. How often is that done?
2 to 3 weeks.
So every 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have helicopters flying down the proposed route?
Or it could be fixed wing, and what height are they usually? 1,000 feet.
On top of this electric one, I read it.
Yeah, the electric one's already.
Okay. I guess we'll get back to me after.
We'll come back. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Larry Hilton. I live at 296 Park Street. And my question is, it seems like we've been dancing around this all night, but are we ultimately talking eminent domain? Are the citizens going to have the final say, or who has the final say?
The citizens are part of the process, but ultimately the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
So those 5 guys in Washington.
If they decide to approve the project, what they're giving is a certificate of public convenience and necessity, which says it's in the public interest.
So it's eminent domain. It's going to be eminent domain. Okay, thank you.
Heights. I have several questions, I know I'm only allowed one, but that pipeline ends in Linfield. What happens to that pipeline after it ends in Linfield, one? And two is, it seems like, what I've read, I've been mistaken, that there is enough gas coming into the area now, and that the ultimate proposal for this gas pipeline is to export gas to Canada and whatever out of the country. If that happens, and they're willing to pay $3 per gallon, and our gas is $1.50, who's going to get the gas at $3 per gallon, and what will the cost of our gas be?
I'm going to answer the latter. The map up there, the line is proposed to take it from across Massachusetts and end in Drake, Massachusetts. In Drake is a hub for gas, where gas can move in different directions. Well, this lateral goes from Drake southeast to the Linfield area, and it connects with other Tennessee gas pipelines. We're already servicing that area, and the customers through the open season have expressed an interest in receiving more gas in that area. So this new line will come across and then come down to get gas to that area, because the route that's currently serving that area is capacity constrained. There's no volume to get the gas there. So the gas comes across northern Massachusetts to Drake, and then at Drake it connects down, and it does connect with other Tennessee gas pipelines at that location. And there's a market interest. Like I say, we don't have the contracts yet, but there are open seasons where these customers have expressed the interest in the gas, and that's why these lines are designed that way, to get the gas to the market. And I'll let Adam explain a little bit about the market.
So as I mentioned at the outset, we still don't have signed contracts with customers. So the entire purpose of this project is based upon commitments and contracts with local distribution companies. So those are companies that were listed here before. Those are companies that currently serve customers and want to expand their markets in New England. To your point about will any of this ever end up in Canada and other places, a pipeline, every interstate pipeline in the country, not just the 13,000-mile Tennessee gas system, every interstate natural gas system, pipeline, transmission line is a common carrier. And what that means is you have to have open access in your line, which means legitimate companies who have legitimate interest in the transportation of natural gas to their customers can potentially sign up on their line. They have to go through an approval process as well. So could some of this gas end up going to Canada? It's possible. But the firm contracts that we need, the 700 million that we need, cubic feet per day of commitments, have to come not from potential projects down the road, whether they're LNG or something down the road, but from companies that today can sign up for 15 or 20-year commitments that they're going to use this gas for their existing company base. So the project is based upon service to New England and local distribution companies. There may be, and it's required, that these pipelines are common carrier and can have open access to additional customers.
So I can make a follow-up, or you get it?
Well, I was going to say North Reading, most of North Reading does not have natural gas pipelines going through it. We have no benefit in these whatsoever, most of us. There's nothing to it.
Well, the longer-term benefit will be tax revenue to the community. We will be paying that on any new infrastructure that we have. So the 25 million roughly that we're going to pay across the state, that's going to be divided up to the taxing bodies where the pipe is actually located. So there will be specific tax liabilities for us to pay. It is true that there's no guarantee that immediately there's going to be additional customers or additional gas service provided. But again, we're doing this at the basis of LDCs and customer requests. Do they want to expand their networks? Some of them told us that. I mean, that they're interested in expanding the access of natural gas to their customers. We can't tell them to do that. We don't run their businesses, but the possibility exists of them doing that, and frankly only exists if they have additional natural gas supply to do that. If they're going to have to make some investments in developing the system of distribution, but additional supply of natural gas enhances that possibility.
Hi. In your handout, George Chabot, 2 Louis Park East. In your handout, you note that there are compression stations along the line to compress or recompress evacuated in some cases from the area. And the fact of methane is an additional side impact on the people determined, I guess, how many compression stations there are along the pipeline, and in that case, how far an off-running would be from an aerosol, and what radius is affected by such an event, the venting events. You said the venting is sometimes necessary to relieve overpressure, and this apparently occurs at somewhat regular intervals. How much methane is released in a typical venting event, and how much CO2 equivalent does it equal to?
So the first part of your question is the compressor stations that would be associated with this line. So we currently, under the current plan for the project, is here at the origination of the right to Draken portion, and in Draken at the termination of the line. So we anticipate one here and one here. Now, if we do have additional capacity or go above that 700 million that I talked about, we could add additional compression, and those would be somewhere along the routing here. We haven't made determinations on if those are needed. If we do, they will be clearly identified as part of our FERC certificate process when we file in October, when we file our preferred route. If we're going to have compressor stations, we'll need to identify those in our certificate application, so you'll be able to see those there. But currently, with our current plan, it's a station at the beginning and a station at the termination of the line.
And in regards to venting, you're absolutely correct. At compressor stations, through normal operations, there are times that valves are opened or there has to be gas released to the atmosphere, and the gas is released through vents straight up in the atmosphere at times through venting. There's other operational times where the pipelines, Alan said one of the maintenance programs were integrity management, where you have to put a tool we call a smart pig in the line and run that tool, pressure moved by gas, and in order to put the tool in the line and take the tool out, there's normal venting. It's all planned during the process, but it's a very controlled situation. It's a very rare situation where it's vented. All the proper permits have to be in place to vent properly. That's why vents are located. And, you're not going to see a vent located underneath the power line where gas would be vented to the power line. It would never be designed that way. As far as the volumes and how the CO2 equivalent, I just can't answer that question at this time. It would vary.
How about the radius of the affected population? In case we had to evacuate, why do you have to evacuate if it's done under state conditions? Some kind of accidental effect?
Yeah. This isn't our literature, by the way. So I'm not, you're quoting this doesn't belong to us. So we can't answer and speak to specifically what's in here.
Hi, Matt Martin, 5 Parsonage Lane. I was hoping to go back to the North Reading map, if we could. And my house is about 3/4 of a mile from the project, so I don't envision this affecting me, but I do sympathize with the folks whose backyards this would be going through. So I have a question related to siting. So let's say the 30-inch pipeline gets built to Drake, which is a trading hub for New England. Tennessee has lines coming out of Drake to the south, line that goes through Tewksbury, comes in through Wilmington, and then heads east from there through Reading. There's a 20-inch line on this map. This is the green line at the very bottom. Earlier in the presentation, I believe it's Mark, on the engineering side, you said down in New Jersey, you just got done building a pipeline 10 feet from an existing pipeline. Why not use the routes that you already have through Tewksbury, Wilmington, Reading, put another 20-inch line right next to it? It's with easements with people that already have them, relationships that you already have. You don't have to go through this whole process. Just take North Reading out of the equation.
Well, that's a good question. And number one, where we do that is in areas where it's limited areas, and the majority of areas are open, so you have some restricted areas is the only way to get through. But that is some of the alternatives that we'll have to answer as to why we came and why we couldn't put it next to the existing line already and get to the market. And those are the types of things that we're going to have to do, explain in our one of the first processes when we file with FERC. If we file and get a market in October, the FERC has 12 resource reports, but when we file a project description, resource 1, it tells you what the project is, what it is, and we have to file resource 10, which is the alternatives analysis. But In answer to your question, at this time, in looking at it, co-location, we felt the preferred route was to co-locate next to the existing power line on this direct route to get from point A to point B versus the other route at this time.
But my route is co-locating with your existing pipeline.
Right. And our point was, in evaluating it, this is the route that we had come up with, the preferred route that we wanted to come out and get survey permissions and evaluate that preferred route.
When you go to FERC in October with your proposed route, does that have to be surveyed, the whole route? And if you don't have permission to survey people's land, essentially, I feel like the October timeline might be a little bit aggressive.
We can file, we'd like to have the majority of survey, but we can file with, if we have 50% survey, we can still file with that 50% survey. And the next step, as Alan said, is we have open houses where we set up a room like this and we talk about the route, and you'll see the route on a map. And then FERC has hearings after that, and it's a similar form to this where everybody comes and the open house is more casual, where it's not on the record. The FERC scoping meeting, some of these same questions come up. And, but there will be a route, at that time, there will be a route on the map. We're here, we've got a survey corridor. What goes in October may or may not look like that route.
My name is George Griffin. I live at 2 David Street. I guess I have a comment and a question. I guess the comment would be, not long ago there was a fire in the power line behind David Street, and it caused a great deal of anxiety on the part of the power company. They are hypersensitive about that. In fact, they're taking down a whole lot of trees, and it looks like a war zone back there, just because they're very concerned about the safety of the power line. That's my comment. My question would be, do you think they'd be comfortable with blasting and equipment and all sorts of construction going on right there as well? And the second part of my question is, you used the term earlier about, if the landowners don't allow this, et cetera, et cetera. Well, my question is, what would need to occur for it to be disallowed?
Yeah, as far as constructing your power lines, you're correct. Again, that's a very unique situation. Many pipelines are co-located next to power lines, so it's a very common co-location because you've already got a swath of trees cleared or a corridor. And during the construction, there is agreements with the power company to protect not only the homeowners, but to protect that power line during construction. So those are taken into consideration.
The public participation process with FERC, with the state agencies, is extensive. And you're encouraged to be involved and part of that process. You can go to the FERC website too. All of the information that we will file on this project is public. You'll be able to see all the customers, the routing. And I encourage you, once we do, if we file our application, to sign up at FERC.gov. You actually get, if you file on our docket number, all of the information is filed with this project. Those who are objecting to it, supporting it, all of that will come into your inbox, sometimes on a daily basis, and you'll get all the information. So it's a very user-friendly, very transparent process. And FERC is the regulatory agency, and they take into and give great weight to, take into account and give great weight to landowner and stakeholder comments. And all of the comments that are made during these public comment periods, FERC is going to respond to. Sometimes they'll do it directly to in writing. Sometimes they'll address it in their draft environmental impact statement. The comments that you made in the front row about why aren't we co-locating with the other line, those will be addressed. So all of the comments that you're making are valid questions about, from the very large level, is this pipeline needed for the region? Is this the type of pipeline that's needed? To the actual routing of the pipeline. So it's a very involved regular question. The draft environmental statement will be several volumes thick as they address all of these issues. And then that draft is open for public comment review for further refinement. So I encourage you to be involved in the process. As a company too, this stage is important to us because in addition to securing customers, I also said, is this project permittable? And permittable means that the regulatory agencies, we believe, in our experience with building pipelines here in New England and across the country, is this something that will be approved? Considering that there's going to be opposition to the project, there's no question about that. There's going to be opposition to whatever route we choose. If we move the route 20 miles over, it would be opposed there as well. There's always going to be opposition. So taking all that into account, and have we worked hard enough with landowners? Can we get enough survey permission? We need to believe, too, that this pipeline is permittable. We're not going to go forward with the project that we don't believe at the end of the day, and on balance, while not supported by everyone, will be in the public interest. So we haven't crossed that threshold either. We've got to secure the customer commitments. We have to make sure we believe this is a permittable line, and then move the process forward. So we encourage and welcome everybody being involved in the process, showing up at meetings, writing to FERC, and being involved in that dialogue, because it does make a difference. Go to the website and look at other pipelines, other applications, and what's out there, and you'll see that it does make a difference if FERC does listen.
Who makes the decision on whether it's allowed?
FERC. Ultimately, it's a federally regulated project. It's not a project that can be constructed until the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, 5 commissioners appointed by the President, make a public vote. And that ultimately will give us the ability to construct.
Over here, then. Over here.
My name is Rich Peak. I live at 54 Chestnut Street, which is not too far from the Linfield line. I have a bigger question, a more high-level question. Obviously, the people that are directly affected in the properties is a major issue, but another major issue is the ecosystem and the environmental issues at play. And I know you have to go through lots of regulatory issues for that, but what is the experience that you guys understand in terms of the construction of it, how it affects the ecosystem, but then the long-term potential leakage into groundwater, the effect on wildlife, anything else that may be through this line? I mean, this is a line that's going through wetlands and other things and rivers, and I would question that as well as a major issue.
Well, I think the best way to answer that, because we can speak in generalities about the process, but what you'll see in detail are the questions that you're talking about, the effects on environmentally sensitive areas. If you can't address those directly, what mitigation is going to be required to address those potential environmental impacts. That's what the MEPA process is about. That's what the draft environmental impact statement is about, and all of that will be detailed as part of our application and as part of the regulatory review process.
What is the potential leakage of the line? What is it constructed of, and what is any potential leakage that might happen?
Well, the potential leakage is rare as any. I'm never going to say never, but we have no experience in any leakage in there on the pipes the way they're built. They're high-pressure steel. It's all controlled from the mill to the installation with the coatings and with the pressure testing before we put gas in it, and then the maintenance throughout. So the leakage, I know that comes up in a lot of questions as far as that. I don't think, I can say that's very little impact there. Now, you're right, it's construction. It does change things, but the history of pipelines, of where we are and the mitigation and how we construct, again, through the process, we have to prove that we can maintain the ecosystem, and then we have to follow through with that. We have to, in some areas, plant trees in wooded wetlands. We have to make sure that wetlands come back, all controlled by conservation commissions, all the Corps of Engineers, and go through a lot of mitigating. It's unbelievable how much environmental mitigation that we do. When we do open houses, if we get to that point, we'll have photos and studies of what we are. We just, again, I'm off a project, we just went through 3 state parks in northeastern New Jersey. We were able to permit it, we were able to build it, we were able to plant trees and maintain the ecosystem there. So just, I can say it, but that's where we're at.
Yes, look at this gentleman's been waiting patiently, and then we'll move it. Okay.
My name is Spencer Galway. I live at 15 Damon Street. My property abuts the corridor.
When I purchased my home about 38 years ago, National Grid had two lines of electrical lines going down the corridor. They are metal towers which have arms, and each tower carries several lines. The set of towers closest to my property, the arms reach out, and the one line is practically right over my back fence. Some years ago, National Grid put in a third set. These were wooden towers up and down the corridor. So now there are 3 sets of lines going down the corridor. Let's say all of this comes to fruition. You go through your planning, your vetting, and all the other federal and state organizations review it and say, yeah, we think this is a good idea. Now you come to us and ask us for an easement to put up the pipeline. And if we don't want to do that, you're going to take it anyway to eminent domain. So we're really kind of stuck with this. My question, I'm not sure if it's from Ray or Mark, when you go to actually put in that pipe, does it go, if there's 3 sets of towers now, does it go underneath the towers or in between the towers, or would you put it outside of the 2 exterior lines?
Again, that will depend on the dialogue. I know this isn't the answer you want now, but we'll follow up with you as our discussion with National Grid sort of progress in this case as to with their existing easements, the height of those towers, the voltage within those towers, which fluctuates throughout the year. So it's a little preliminary for us to answer how it will take place specifically through your neighborhood. I'm sorry we don't have those answers now, but we will as we gather more information from them. And part of the reason we're requesting survey permission is to obtain this level of detail, so that way they're going to share information with us. We're going to have our boots on the ground, which understand pipeline construction, to see how we can match to minimize the impact to the folks' backyard. But I'm sorry, right now I don't have that level of detail as to where it would be under, between, outboard, because as Mark stated, in generalities, it could be any of those scenarios based on other pipelines across the country. Yeah. Correct.
My follow-up comment would be, 38 years ago when I purchased my home, I knew there was an easement, and I knew that easement came about 20 or 30 feet in my backyard. And they gave National Grid the right to trim trees, but they didn't want the trees to get too close to the power pole. They did not give them the right to construct new towers in my backyard, just simply trim the trees back. But are you saying that there's a chance that you could put this 30-inch pipeline through my backyard, that 20 or 30 feet that National Grid has to trim trees, you could come into that 30 feet and dig and put a pipeline there?
Well, potentially, again, I don't know the easement specifics. We don't have the language on those specific easements, but we could potentially obtain from you a brand new easement, which has some overlap within that 20-foot area I think you described it to me.
But again, if I refuse, if I don't want to give you an easement, I don't want your pipeline in my backyard, and you use eminent domain to force this on me, is that a possibility? Can you dig up my backyard and put a pipeline in my backyard?
Yeah, I guess.
If you can't answer that question tonight, I would like you to follow up, talk to your legal department, and either post it online or let the selectmen know. What is that follow-up?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes.
Right.
I know why you guys can't say yes, but honestly, the answer is yes.
Well, even if that process were to go through and you did not want to grant an easement, and we went through that legal process, a dialogue would still exist between the landowner and the country, between the company. And I want that dialogue to exist to understand the specifics of your property and those areas that you're most concerned about, so that we can design something, however we can, that minimizes the impacts to you, whether it's alternate construction techniques to minimize temporary workspace. The easement itself will typically be 50 feet, but how we work within that and how we construct could be altered.
I hope you understand why I'm here tonight.
Absolutely.
We understood National Grid to come in and trim trees and cut them down, but we never agreed to National Grid to come in and build a tower on our backyard. So this is why we would never want to allow you to build a 30-inch gas, 1,400 per square inch gas pipeline. Again, tearing down trees, digging up cement, whatever you had to do to get that through there. And 30-inch gas line going through the backyard. You know, your kids are gonna play there, you're gonna put in a swimming pool. It's awful. I hope you understand how upsetting this is to everybody here.
We understand that the feedback from Damon Street residents notice has been conveyed to the company and is being considered. And as we talked about before with valuations, compensation, it's a case-by-case scenario. But I do promise you, we will work with you to financially make it whole for this process.
If that means that
Hold on,
very well, our house is worth, that's $100,000.
Jonathan, I'm going to ask you to please refrain. Go ahead.
I'll defer to anything done wrong.
I just want to know, like, how real it is. Like, I'm just scared that compensation means $2,000, $5,000. I'm just concerned that if the fair market value of my home, our home falls by $100,000 or $200,000, but everybody knows about this pipeline, they don't like it. Will you really compensate us $100,000 or $200,000?
The answer is yes. And it may not be you and I sitting at a kitchen table, it would be appraisals that would be involved in that process. But if there was documentation to state that something that we did to require the easement through the construction altered that value, then those are the valuations. Now, it's very early in the process. It's way too premature for me to talk about valuations per acre within any given community or any given neighborhood at this time. But to try to put you at ease that if there's valuation and there's data and appraisals that support that type of evaluation, then the company will compensate.
Go ahead. And we'll come over.
Dallas Kaufman, 24 Havel Street. My house sits on the power lines. National Grid has an easement on my land, a big one. I have a couple of questions, and I hope to be brief. This handout says 125-foot clear cut. Is that true?
Well, first off, it's not our handout. In areas like this, that is not true. It's not 125 feet clear cut. It's not that wide. This is a small diameter line. This is a 20-inch line. The way we're looking at it now, it depends on market. So in these areas, you may be looking at, depends on the workspace. If you've got a power line and you've got a house there, you have to do what they call residential construction. The 125 feet is if you're out and putting a 30 or 36-inch line cross-country with side hill, and you've got to get equipment in there and do it, which is your traditional construction. Areas like this, you're using residential construction, so you could be down to 50 feet constructing, you could be 75, you could be 30 feet if that's the space you have. So that's not a correct statement for this area.
Referring to my neighbor's comment just before I spoke, when National Grid put up the third tower, and I did not see that happen, something tells me there was no check payable to the homeowners as a thank you for that privilege. For you to say that after the easement is taken by eminent domain, that you would then come back years later and compensate is not something I believe for 1 second. And I'm curious, because I think and by the tone of this meeting and your behavior, introducing you to the concept of the town, the fact that the three of you are here now, you got a nice little PowerPoint, tells me you know exactly what you're doing. And by the tone of the people here tonight, I'm thinking your eminent domain is what we're looking at. How does the value of the easement get determined? And I'm sure you've had experience doing this. The last time you were in eminent domain, how did that value get paid to the homeowner, say, per foot of pipeline?
Again, yeah. Well, first, I can't comment on anything that National Grid has done to the properties in the community. I hope everyone understands that. As far as valuations, the reason I'm hesitant to talk dollars and cents right now is because we don't have any data. We haven't even begun to look at that because we are just simply now exploring routes and survey permission. So I don't have any appraisers. I haven't looked at assessed values. To speak in general about how those values are determined, appraisals would come into play if we got to the scenario that you were talking about, where we couldn't come to terms financially together. We would hire appraisers. You may hire your own appraisers. If the courts got involved, it would be court appraisers as well. Hope that answers that.
I think probably people can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
My name is Carrie Stewart. I live at 421 Park Street. I'm not an abutter to this proposed project. The power lines in your proposed pipeline are nowhere near my house. So I want you folks sitting on this side of the room to be clear that not every person who's here tonight is here because they're of the thought of not in my backyard. Because it doesn't affect me personally, but it affects my neighbors and my friends. I've sat here for an hour and a half and heard in the people's voices here, anxiety, heartache, confusion. They've talked about mistrust. But I haven't heard one benefit to what this is to an individual here in North Reading or the town as a whole. I heard you throw out a figure of, I think it was 25 million, might not have been 25 million, but that's not 25 million for North Reading folks. That's 25 million distributed statewide. I haven't heard you say North Reading is going to get X amount of dollars to the tax coffers, but I don't care. Because there's not one thing that I've heard tonight that I think is a benefit to our town. I've heard a lot of things that I think is not helpful to this town. Who wants this big gas main? I don't want it. Again, I'm not here, but boy, I look at that proposed map and I say, geez, that pretty much cuts off the whole southwest corner of this, of our town, should anything happen. You have a proposed pipeline here that bisects Route 28, which is a state highway, that's the major north-south route. And then you have it also bisecting Park Street, which is a major east-west route. Question. In the event of a catastrophic event with your pipeline, what is the radius of damage?
That is not an answer that we can give without a lot of data. I know that's not what you want to hear, but the way the pipelines are constructed, where the valves are located, the pressure of the line, there are a lot of factors that go into it. How the line was impacted, when it can be shut down, natural gas escapes into the air, is there a ignitable situation there? All those factors go into account. But your question is about safety?
No,
I think.
my question was specific. You have clearly constructed in other areas a pipeline of the same diameter with the same pressure going through it. So you have to have this data. So it's a pretty clear question. What is the radius of damage?
It's not a clear answer. And a lot of factors are taken into account to determine that. And can there be incidents on lines? Yes. Where and how those happen depend on the impacts of the particular area. Pipelines are designed to minimize those impacts by shutting down the pipeline, by valve systems that segregate the pipe and allow the gas to prevent. So pipelines, I said at the outset, I'm not here to say that pipelines are without any instance or possibility of incidents happening, but it is the safest way to transport energy. And I'll say this too. Our pipelines have been operating here for 60 years. And you look at a pipeline company and the record of the pipeline company by their track record in the area, and it's been a very good, corporately responsible pipeline system delivering gas to local customers. So a lot of folks in Massachusetts have benefited from the Tennessee gas pipeline system. I know you're saying there's no benefit to the community, but literally millions of people are heating their homes and businesses through the Tennessee gas pipeline system. And I think that's a benefit to Massachusetts and New England.
Okay, I have one follow-up, and excuse me, but I couldn't really see this map from back there, so I'm gonna just come up here. And, excuse me. So, the reason I asked you my question about the radius of damage is as follows. My family is all grown. I have no young children. Are you aware that there's an elementary school that's right here? I would to ask the town officials to get the school people involved in this, because, and any people who are out here who have kids at the little school, heads up, because this might not be in your backyard, but it might darn well potentially affect where your kid goes to school. And I'm going to show it to you again. If this is Concord Street, it's right here.
My name is Bill Scribner. I live at 319 Park Street, directly right behind where this stuff's going on. Second motion. I have 3 young boys, and I'll be honest, I'd like to see it grow up. One incident, in my eyes, is too many. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know how many incidents we've had over your 50 years of track record. One incident is too many. That's what it is.
We'll work our way forward.
I can talk.
Go right ahead.
Question to you guys first on how you secure or monitor security with the pipeline. Is there someone besides the helicopters? Is there some sort of, what's to prevent someone to go in through underneath the power lines, shovel up 3 feet of dirt and puncture the line? Second would be just a comment to the selectmen. What is the trust factor that in the event of emergency here, that what they've already shown us, they're going to come back and help us out in the event there is a emergency?
Well, we're learning as you're learning. So there was a lot of unanswered questions. And things like that still have to be worked out for us. You know, in most cases, the residents learned about this before any of the board of selectmen members did. And Mr. O'Leary highlighted earlier when we started this off. The communication hasn't been good. And I'm going to wrap this up in a little while, and my conclusion is going to focus a little bit on that. So I'd like to get a few more questions in. I'd like to try to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes if we can. We are going to do this again, I assume, so, but I don't want it, we have to change folks to answer questions, so let's try to grab
So how do you monitor the pipeline on a safety basis?
The pipeline is monitored remotely 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if there is an incident on the line, a third-party impact of the line that would affect the pressure of the line, the pipeline is able to be shut down and segregated in a particular area. Where we have meter stations, we'll have fence areas in those particular cases, cyclone fence. The pipeline itself is buried underground. Now, does that mean that someone could potentially come up, potentially dig in an area? Of course, that's a possibility anywhere in the United States where there's pipeline infrastructure, it's a possibility. But the ability to segregate and shut down is really the ultimate safety process in place so that it limits any impact of line to that particular area.
But where is the unit, where are the people that are available to go to that hotspot if there's an issue? Is it in another country, another state, another?
We've got, right now, we've got a major operations center in Hopkinton, Mass.
And that's the only, so when you do this line, are there going to be additions to just Hopkinton?
There possibly could be, we haven't determined, we're not that far along, but there possibly could be.
Hi. I just want to speak to the mistruth that Keenan Bryn told me. He called me at least 2 times at my home. He visited me at least 3 times. He parked at the end of my street while I was outside playing with my kids. He told me that this gas line would give me gas to my home, which I didn't want anyways. He told me people in the neighborhood already signed for permission. He said that he had permission on the easement portion of my land. And he said the route is set. So he told me all these lies, and I frankly don't believe half the things you're saying to me, especially because someone from your company came to my home and lied to me.
I do want to comment on that because I've heard a few statements tonight about misconceptions of the way things were articulated. If anyone is out there representing the company lying, they would be fired. I assure you that. if we didn't train someone properly, then I apologize for that.
He just wanted my signature, that's what he put. So maybe that's how you train people, I don't know. He told me those things.
With
Okay? While I was outside with my children, he interrupted my time with my children, hanging out in front of my house at the end of my street at least 3 times. And he called my house once. Okay?
But he is directed to reach out to people. We do try to do
Yes,
face-to-face
3 times.
interaction.
That's harassment.
And I apologize if anyone feels that way. Okay, that is not the intention. Okay, we do
I think
ask.
it's going to be further harassed too. Because we're not going to
Let me make this clear. If folks don't feel comfortable with someone visiting or calling them, come see me afterwards, and we could make a note in anyone's file that they only
If
be.
anyone feels comfortable, does anyone feel comfortable?
Well, no.
No.
We already said no. People could request that they only be contacted via mail, if that's something that someone wanted at this stage of the process. So let's curtail the way we're communicating with them, which is most comfortable for you. Okay, I'm sorry that didn't happen to this point, but we can certainly correct that going forward. Right.
My name is Parker Copeland. I live at 3 Scotland Heights. We are a butter to this project. Couple questions, well, one question, but one comment is that we too have been harassed multiple times. We've said no, and we've been continually harassed. But I'm not sure how many people in this room know this, but your president, the president of Kinder Morgan, is the former president of Enron. So I guess that's the barometer we're looking at right now. So, former COO and president of Enron. So you're touting your safety record over the last 6 years. So can you tell me about Columbiana County, Ohio, or Gloucester, Ohio, or Batesville, Mississippi, or Powell County, Kentucky? All 4 places in the last 12 months alone have had incidents. You talk about no leaks. Powell County was a leak. Columbiana County, 200-foot flames in the air. Could be seen for 40 miles. And that's going to be 100 feet from where we sleep?
To the first point, Rich Kinder was president of Enron, but he left the company because he was passed over and not hired to be CEO. He left Enron when Enron was the most respected company in America. He left it. And he started Kinder Morgan.
That's what he was doing.
You're going to talk about...
That's not an excuse.
You're going to attack our company. I'm going to defend our company. I think that was a cheap shot, because Rich Kinder has no association with any problems of Enron. What was your second question? About incidents in the pipeline. So I never said, I said to go to our website and take a look at our safety record. And you can go there and look at the incidents that we've had on the pipeline system of operating 80,000 miles of pipelines across North America. You cited 4 incidents. I'm not sure that on every one of those incidents, but I'm not going to deny that our pipeline does have occasional incidents. All pipeline systems do. All energy infrastructure does. What I am saying is that if you compare our safety record to the industry safety record, it's much better. It's the industry leader in safety. So we're going to continue to have the best integrity management systems, the best safety protocols, the best training of our folks to make sure that our pipeline is safe, and the pipeline system we've operated in New England has been safe.
The only problem I have with what you're saying right now is specific questions were asked about safety issues and if you had any problems over the last couple of years. And it's kind of like just standing around those until she brought up 4 instances. So, you know, again, this goes back to a level of trust, and we're not getting that level of trust. I don't think it's being built tonight because you're not being honest with people who are asking the questions.
I just have one question. I think everybody here opposes this project. It's true. Local representatives, state, legal will do for the town because we all object. Are you going to stick by us and fight them all the way to not have this project go through North Reading? I think that's the question that everybody here is asking right now.
One of the things that we've done is we've taken that letter, that threatening letter that was sent to all of you. We took it, we provided it to our legal counsel. We asked them to read it. There were some references to state law, general laws, and so on and so forth.
We have built a fact sheet. The fact sheet's completed. It will be posted on our website over the next day or so. I want you all to obtain that fact sheet and read it. This is for our legal counsel. We have our representatives here, Senator Tarr, Representative Jones here. Maybe they have more feedback on what you can do, and I'm hoping we get a little of that. But that fact sheet, the way I read it, what kind of shit's creep with this? And so that means we got to go beyond the state, right? We have to team up and work together collectively and go beyond that, I think, to have any effect on this. And then you need to do, you need to listen to what's going on here. You know, you started out in a bad direction and we're continuing that way. The letter was completely unnecessary. You know, Mr. Messeri asked earlier when we started the meeting, you need to work with this board first before you go out to our residents. Because they rely on us. We're a small town, a small community, but we support each other. And the way you come out here and you say, you pride yourself on the way you guys operate your company. But, you know, we pride ourselves on how we watch out for each other, and we protect each other, and we support each other. We use the process, and that's communication. We communicate here, and we communicate there. And if you continue to go around us to go to them, it's not going to get worse. And so you guys need to do some work on this. You need to read that fact sheet. It's a little scary. And then I'd like to get the opportunity right now, if you can, okay, one question, then I'd like to get the Representative Jones or Senator Tarr to help, just, if there is anything you can offer, what do we do to make sure that the FERC understands the impact on our community?
Just a neighbor, 130 Chestnut, not in a butter, but our safety record in town right now is perfect. So we don't have to go back 60 years. We don't have a pipeline, and we're perfect. So I defer my question to this gentleman here because I'd like him to finish your questions, and he can have mine and my follow-up.
Bill Monahan again, 1 Dana Street. I urge everybody in this room, as well as the town board, to just say no. We don't want the pipeline. If we all just say no, maybe they'll just go away.
Before we take any more questions, though, Representative Jones or Representative, would you?
Thank you, Mike. First of all, I just want to say thanks to the selectmen for providing us an opportunity for some open and honest communication here tonight. I think it's long overdue, and I'm glad that it started here tonight. I did have a couple of questions before I offer you some thoughts for our guests. And one of them is the need for the pipeline based on projected demand or existing demand? What is the argument that you're making to the FERC, or will be making to the FERC, for the necessity of the project?
We'll potentially be arguing both. Existing demand, which was shown in concerns in the last heating season, where there were price spikes and shortages and purchases on the spot market, so that seasonal issues with natural gas supply, the conversion of power plants that maybe are run by coal or other sources to natural gas is going to have a natural increase on the system, and the power supply, the electricity supply going up as the natural gas supply is. So even without any new customers, the reliance on natural gas is going to be more, and there's no more capacity with existing pipelines. So that's the current really trend happening without any new draw onto the line. So if you put into that over the next 20 to 25 years, and that's really kind of the timetable we should look at for new pipeline infrastructure is 20 to 25 years. What is the natural gas supply going to be needed? Well, the studies out there that are showing the continual increase. So nuclear going down, coal going down, crude oil going down, renewables going up, and natural gas going up. So when will perhaps renewables take some of that off of natural gas? It's hard to say, but from a short-term basis, to address the needs in the system now and the constraints on the system identified by those who manage the system. The long term is more reliance on natural gas because of conversion of power plants and more reliance on natural gas generally as the other fuels go down.
So a couple of questions. First of all, I'm hoping that you can share some of that information with us so that we can digest it, because it will be integral to the decisions of the FERC, and therefore they're important to us. Second question is, do those estimates take into account the unused capacity of the 2 LNG facilities that have been constructed offshore, which have received very little gas over the last few years?
They're playing into some of the analysis, not as much as our analysis is, because our contracts that we're seeking to secure are with existing local distribution companies, and they're familiar to us as long-standing customers. We're looking at having them expand their commitments to us. So that's really what ours is based on. But to your point about getting you the analysis and part of and our early read on what is necessary, we'd be happy to do that. I think that's important information to have. It will also be, as part of this FERC approval process, it's going to be that analysis, it's going to be the independent FERC analysis, it's going to be the state of Massachusetts analysis with the Office of Energy and Environment. All of that collectively is going to be taken in to determine whether or not this is in fact a needed project. Is a project this big? There's another project that Spectra is looking at, expanding their Algonquin system. Is that the project that's needed? Are neither projects needed? So it's not just a debate about really this project. I think what the FERC is going to be looking at is the collective natural gas issue for the area, and they'll make the determination a lot based on what you're talking about.
So, and that's the reason why I think it's critical for this community to have that kind of information so that we can participate meaningfully in a dialogue with FERC. And I guess before I get to the state issue, I just wanted to ask 2 more questions relative to the overall project. One, I'm presuming that part of the project is intended to contribute to base load as opposed to anything like peak shaving or anything that's more speculative.
It is, and again, we're just going to be providing it to the local distribution companies, and then they're going to be determining exactly how the supply is used. But in their determination from our customer negotiations with them, that both of those will be part of the equation.
Okay. And just the last question of that nature, with regard to the alternatives analysis that FERC will require you to do, how many alternatives is the company contemplating exploring at this point?
I would say typically on a pipeline, alternatives, perhaps 3 or 4 alternatives may need to be identified from a project of this magnitude. And you know, I will say this too, this is it is a major project for the region. It's a $4 billion project. There hasn't been a project like this in this kind of configuration in a very long time. We put in major pipeline systems 50 years ago, but in modern history and generation, this is the biggest project. So what will FERC look at? How many will they require? They're going to rely heavily on the state of Massachusetts in their determination. So the input that the state has, the public utilities folks, all the forecasters that you have, the governor's office, and all the other, and you folks in the state legislature, are going to play a role in this. And it's a policy issue too. Is this needed in this size, in this shape? That's going to be debated and discussed in the process.
And so, bringing us to that, and I apologize, and I appreciate everyone's indulgence on this. With regard to the role that the state has, certainly there's a role for the Energy Facility Siting Board, there's a role for the Department of Telecommunications and Energy, there's a role for the Department of Environmental Protection, there's a role for the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. I'm hoping that you could just touch on that a little bit.
And we do have a slide in here on the process as well. And many of the entities that you mentioned are part of that process, as well as the state legislature. If there is an Article 97 process where we're asking to access state lands, where it would require a 2/3 vote of the state legislature, both houses, and a signature by the governor if we cross state lands. So there is a very active and engaged process through each one of those. We'll need to receive permits, and there'll be public hearings as part of that process with all of those different entities, many of which are part of Energy and Environmental Affairs. So it's an extensive state process. While the FERC ultimately has jurisdiction on whether the project can go forward, they defer tremendously to the state government to help them find a way through this, and the uniqueness of the state and your regulatory processes, so the state's going to have a big say in that.
Appreciate that, and I appreciate, again, everyone's indulgence. So let me just suggest to you, number one, and I'll speak for Brad just for a moment, but the two of us consider this issue very, very seriously. Number two, we will do all within our power to protect the health and public safety of this community. Number three, let me point out that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the FERC, has a tremendous amount of power in this equation, and that's what makes it necessary for us to understand the FERC process and to be able to bring to bear our thoughts and resources on that process by targeting some of the factors that I've just tried to highlight with my questions. Number two, let me point out that the state, in fact, does have a major role here through several of those agencies as well as the legislative process. And I can assure you that Representative Jones and I will do all within our power to bring the full force of state government to bear on this project. Thank you.
My name is Rich Cowan. Actually, I'm from Drake. We didn't have a chance to ask questions on April 8th at the Board of Select meeting. So if you don't mind if I ask a question from Drake, you're appreciated. This project is stated to be a 20-inch pipeline. The project going through Drake, from what I hear most recently, would be a 36-inch pipeline. The question I have is if this southern end didn't get built, would you still go to Drake? And I understand that in order to justify this, you have to show there's customers. And the people live, the population centers are, Eastern Massachusetts, Rhode Island, or whatever. However, Massachusetts, had a lot of plans to limit use of natural gas and conservation. It has a lot of programs of National Grid to weatherize your house. So if Massachusetts is energy efficient enough to not give you the customers you need to justify this, is this for Rhode Island? Is the lateral going through this area? Is it going to go primarily to Massachusetts, or is the gas going to go to a different state?
Let's go back to the... So are you talking about the lateral here?
The Linfield lateral, exactly.
Okay. The purpose of that is primarily, and Mark can help me with this, but it's connecting our two systems, our north and our south system. So is that absolutely going to be part of our project? I can't say 100% of anything, but it's likely that it will be, or a configuration or a variation of that, so that those two pipeline systems can connect.
Right. And in answer to the second, the way it's configured, I can't say for sure if it goes to customers, but one of the things, that gas may flow backwards, and there's a possibility of some of that gas, the majority of it's along the route in Massachusetts, and some of it may go even as far as Connecticut.
So we'll go all the way into Drake, then south, and back out too.
It could possibly go south, feed all the existing systems in Mass, and then maybe even some of it to Connecticut.
And if you sold more gas, would there be a chance the 20-inch would be 24 or 30 if more customers were willing to sign up and subscribe to your shipping service?
Possibly. It's not in our current design configuration, but whatever it will be identified when we file for our application. I believe it's going to be 20 inches.
One more angle is in Drake. I understand, I didn't know this after attending the meeting on the 8th, but I understand the compression station is supposed to be in East Drake. Can you confirm East Drake, and do you know what the horsepower, projected horsepower will be?
Yes, on the East Drake part.
But it's still, we don't have land there, but it's proposed.
Any idea on horsepower? Still being determined.
And finally, is the compression station designed as your own system to move gas in the southerly direction primarily, or is the compression station going to be a joint venture with Maritimes Northeast to move gas north and reverse the 0.8 billion cubic foot per day Maritimes Northeast pipeline to send gas in the direction of Canada and Goldboro, Nova Scotia?
We'll own that station ourselves.
Okay.
One more question and then I'd like to wrap this up.
Does anyone else have a question? Sure.
If you could tell us at the house level, what we can expect going forward, be specific as possible. Is your, I missed his name, I took his letter in my folder here. Is he going to be visiting us again, calling us? We're going to be getting more love notes in the mail. What is your plan?
Well, if the company continues to move forward with the project, which depends on the customer base and all the other factors down then yes, the dialogue needs to continue with the landowners. I know some folks tonight felt like that was harassment, but that dialogue does need to continue. If we can curtail that communication, like I said, if you prefer certain phone numbers, letters, email correspondence, we can change the way we communicate, but absolutely, as the project progresses, the communication absolutely will progress.
My name is Jan Berry. I live at 68 Marblehead Street for 24 years, and I love this community. I love the historic character. I've donated time. I don't live anywhere near this proposed. When we talk about risk, we can avoid risk. We don't want to talk about litigation, but we want to avoid risk here. We want to totally avoid it. And it's ridiculous. Gas is going away. I've been a utility worker for almost 40 years. But right now I've transitioned into being a professional environmentalist, and our beautiful community can have solar gardens, pure energy. Gas, all the fossil fuels are going away. Let's not let them come into our town at the very end of the fossil fuel. Thank you to our community.
Any global things you want to say anything? Just real quick.
Closing comments and then close that. I know the board had passed around a sign-in sheet, so if everybody here can make sure you're signed in. And I think some of you got correspondence from my office, so we'll try to continue to do that if you sign, to keep you apprised of what's going on. I know we've done a letter, and honestly, the letter I wrote to my constituents was don't sign anything. Get to this meeting tonight. And just kind of echo what Bruce said. We'll kind of do from my perspective, the AAA approach, which is we're going to work to continue to get answers to your questions and concerns. We're going to continue to look at alternatives, and we're going to continue to advocate on behalf of the community that we all represent. And unfortunately, and I guess I'm in kind of Karen's situation, whereas I don't live right there, but I obviously have a lot of friends that I've known for many, many years, and we're going to do everything we can to represent you as effectively as we can in dealing with this issue. And, you know, Dallas, your house was going to be the substation originally, so you know that when we put our minds to it, we can have positive outcomes for the people we represent, and that's what we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for making the time to come tonight. I do hope we can continue this dialogue. I'm going to ask you to please communicate through the town hall, through our town administrator, provide us information before you walk the community. If you're going to send out another letter, give us a heads up so we can communicate and let folks know what's going on. The sign sheets are important because we're going to start communicating through email as well. Look out that fact sheet that's going to be posted on our website.